Welcome to LCS Talks. I'm Berkley Glazer, and I'm the principal of Langley Christian Middle School. Today on the panel, we have Kevin Mirchandani, who is our Director of Instruction for K-12. We have Adam Woelders, who is the Head of Schools for Langley Christian. And we also have special guest, Jonny Zuidhof, who's visiting us. And Jonny was formerly a teacher here for 6 years at Langley Christian Middle. He was a grade 6 teacher. And then he moved on to do some assistant principaling at Abbotsford Christian. And then the last 2 years, Jonny, you've been working with Heritage Christian Online. Maybe just tell the listeners what you do for Heritage.
Perfect. Thanks, Berkley. So I would say to summarize my job there is I work on supporting families as they piece together the puzzle of their kids' education. So at Heritage Christian Online School, that includes usually a mix of units and year plans that are designed by the support teacher in collaboration with the parents. It also includes face-to-face classes, which are often taught in one-day-a-week settings. And then as well, online classes that are walked through with online teachers. So I work with teachers or with parents to kind of piece together that puzzle to find a fit that works well for their children.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, Jonny, your connection here at LCS? Any good stories come to mind? Any Berkley stories or stories and tales of the past?
Well, there are a lot of stories. This is where I started my kind of education journey after my PDP. And it was a great place for me to get started. I really appreciated being at LCS. I think one of the things that I really appreciate from Berkley in particular was the way he encouraged us as teachers to take risks, and even gave me the opportunity to spend a year in Australia and do a teacher exchange, which I really appreciated. So as far as stories, my highlights of my time here at LCS was the staff community. I think there was nonstop good times to be had with the staff.
Lots of practical jokes being played.
Yeah, and I think that atmosphere then would create a good atmosphere then for the students, just to have teachers who are enjoying themselves, and then, naturally the students kind of see the fun that they're having, and it passes through.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the online kind of context? Did you always know you wanted to get into technology in the education setting? Tell us a little about that. Yeah,
so I would say as a family, my wife and I had always considered it. We had thought about, I'm a teacher. Our kids are going to be coming through. We knew that in the elementary years, we wanted to try a different way of doing education with them. And for us, it was naturally a good fit for me to jump into that same world. So, 2 years ago now, we decided to make the jump into kind of that home educating world with Heritage Christian Online School.
Just for our listeners, I'll paint a little picture of the landscape of education online for here in British Columbia. So as you know, we have public schools, we have independent schools, and Langley Christian School is part of the independent division of the ministry. And in 2001, the ministry started a pilot project, which they called distributed learning. To this day, I'm not sure why they decided to call it distributed learning, but it became the acronym DL. And DL schools popped up all over British Columbia. And to this day, we have 16 different DL schools. Heritage Christian that Jonny works for is one of those. But it's only been a pilot project this whole time, which is over 20 years. It's been interesting. And then in March of 2020, the ministry passed Bill 8, which changed the name from DL to online, and it actually gave every school authority the opportunity to actually start an online or remote learning division, which is cool to think about in the future. Now, that's been delayed. It was supposed to start this past September, but now it's going to be possibly September 2023. So we'll see if that works. So there's a little landscape. I'll turn it over to Adam to ask a question.
Yeah, just really curious about what you're seeing out there across the province in terms of really two things. What are the demographics? So who is pursuing online learning? And then a little bit of just around the infrastructure of it. What's required, and what does it look like in terms of just setting up an ideal learning environment for students?
In being in education for 12 years now, I've just really grown to appreciate that we need to provide different options for students. Not all students find success in the same type of setting. And I think that would be a big reason why parents might choose different options, as they see that a certain setting just might not be capitalizing on who their children are, whether it be their character traits or their gifts. So that'd be one reason. I think another reason too is it gives parents the ability to have a bit more of a say in what their children are learning, just to be a bit more part of that experience for their children as they seek to kind of grow and guide them into young people to love and serve God. As far as the structures go, Heritage has it set up. I can speak to Heritage in particular. They have it set up where in grade 5, that's when kind of the online courses start. And online courses are typically set up, or they're set up in two different ways. One way where you meet with a teacher once a week, and then another one is where you don't meet with a teacher once a week, but you also have that ongoing communication and support from a teacher. And then those courses are kind of built out for kids to walk through at their own pace, at a pace that suits them.
Yeah, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about some of the delivery methods and approaches, right from, am I correct in understanding that it starts in grade 5 and goes till grade 12? Graduation is a part of that program and process. What does that look like, Jonny?
Yeah. So K-4, I'll speak to that briefly first, is more so a collaboration of a support teacher working with parents to design a program that works well for their children. So yeah, the support teacher kind of comes in with that expertise of just understanding the BC curriculum and kind of being able to just recognize where their kids are at, identify challenges if they come up, and provide supports where needed. And then, yeah, in grade 5, that's when they would transition into kind of that online setting as an option. But some students still do courses. They do kind of a mix of online or kind of that year plan that would be planned out by a support teacher and a parent.
One of the things that we definitely saw coming through COVID in March of 2020 and then through the summer as people were weighing, is it safe to be back in school? And a lot of families throughout our community, throughout Langley, throughout the Fraser Valley, whether you were in independent schools or public schools, lots of families chose the online option. I believe seeing some stats from my wife's online school where their enrollment in the summer of 2020 just went through the roof. And one of the things a year later, as we found, as some of these families were coming back to schools, is it wasn't quite what parents anticipated or what parents, it was a little bit more than what they expected in terms of that relationship between teacher and student, and the burden, I guess, a little bit more of the parent in the role of teacher. And does that look different across the province? Is there something where, okay, at the earlier grades, the parent really is the teacher? And at what point does somebody else take more responsibility in the direct education of the child?
I mean, even speaking from personal experience, home educating your kids isn't necessarily the easiest route time-wise. It's a full-time job for one of the parents or part-time for both of them. But I think one of the things to really recognize with online teaching is you can't just leave kids at home to work through online courses and expect them to be diligent all the time in working through it independently. There is a need for, obviously, the teacher support and accountability on the school side of things, but there's also a need for parents to be available to help guide their kids through it. I mean, there's the occasional kid that's very self-motivated and doesn't need that support, but I would say, especially in the middle school years, that support of parents to encourage and maybe provide schedules or be available for students is important.
Yeah, it's really helpful in terms of helping us to understand the developmental challenges that will exist and the ways that we continue to support students. So we've been talking on our podcast, Jonny, a little bit about the role that technology is playing in how we're being formed, how it's shaping our identity, how it's shaping us as members of a learning community. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on how online learning environments shape our identity. They shape the challenges that we work through in terms of understanding our own digital citizenship, and how do we navigate some of the opportunities and challenges that emerge from that online environment in our students' development.
I think online courses in particular would provide a great avenue to learn those things, such as how to research well without plagiarizing, how to be safe online, how to communicate through online forums respectfully. But I mean, what kids are kids, right? In a brick and mortar school and in an online setting, you always need to teach kids, right? That they don't necessarily just learn it on their own. They need to be mentored and guided through that. So whether you're in a brick and mortar or in an online setting, you do need that teacher, parent there to just be continuing to teach them how to engage and how to interact.
Now, as the parent of a high school student who's trying to do online French, and he's a highly motivated, pretty successful student who's, say, for example, in accelerated science, but is really struggling with this online French course. It's been taking him almost a year now. He's in the crunch time now in terms of finishing it. He's really struggled with just staying on top of it. I'm curious, is there overall a difference between either completion rates and achievement between online and brick and mortar? Is there an advantage to one or the other, or is it just largely dependent on the individual student?
And I wouldn't have exact numbers for that for sure as far as completion rates, but it is a skill that can be learned as well. What I see in helping families kind of choose options for their kids is often in grade 5, we might encourage one online course, and then in grade 6, maybe 2, and then in grade 7 or 8, maybe 3 or 4. Just because jumping into one, if you haven't done one before, especially at higher grade levels, I think it would be challenging to necessarily maybe thrive or experience that success. So I know Heritage, for example, one of the things they encourage, they actually have an ADSD module that students are encouraged to work through that pretty much teaches them how to navigate online courses. But it isn't something that's for everyone either, right? Some kids experience the online courses and it's not the best fit. So being able to offer different options for kids, I think, is very valuable. But I know that might not even be possible, not always be possible, depending on what schools can offer. So I gave different grade levels.
Yeah, one of the ways we've tried to imagine ourselves as a Christian learning community is that we're connected, that we're thriving, and that we're equipping the people of our community. And so I'm wondering, Jonny, if you can tell us a little about that thriving piece, and where have you seen students really thrive? What are the opportunities and possibilities that online learning presents? Where have you seen students really excel in these kinds of environments?
You know, I think that there's times where a brick and mortar setting for certain kids is challenging. I mean, I think back to 2020, I was still teaching at a brick and mortar school, and after spring break, we shifted to online, which was very challenging for most kids and most families. Definitely very challenging. But I still think back to those couple kids that I had in my class that thrived. There was a couple kids that absolutely rocked it. They all of a sudden had some of the stressors that they were experiencing removed. They didn't have as many distractions. They were actually provided with an opportunity to step up, and they did. So it's definitely not for every student, but I think there are some students that really thrive in that type of setting, and with that, what can be offered through that. And I also think as you look at, I mean, the benefit of online courses is a lot can be offered. And as Adam was talking, like you can take them from different schools, right? So if a student is very interested in a particular topic or module, or a certain subject that might not be offered at their school. It just provides them a chance to experience something that they wouldn't be able to experience otherwise.
Now, Berkley, this may be a question for you, but because as we've been exploring possibly adding an online course or two to our course catalogs here at Alignment Christian, has the government made a shift? Has they signaled a shift in that you may not be able to take moving forward courses from various schools, or it might be a little bit more limited where you can actually take the courses from?
Yeah, correct. That's been the shift with that new bill that they passed in March, Bill 8. It's designed to keep students within a catchment area of the school. So definitely it's to create a relationship between a brick and mortar and a community. And that's kind of a different landscape than what DL schools have done in the past. Now, there's still a niche for big DL schools such as Heritage and some others, and there could be a possibility that they would become what's called a provincial service provider and still be allowed to access multiple areas in the province. But for us as a brick and mortar or any school to offer online learning, it would be kind of confined to your area and your community.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, I'm kind of curious. This may be just an assumption I have, and obviously my world has been a little bit more focused on the brick and mortar sector of the K-12 sector. My understanding is a lot of the larger DL schools aren't strictly DL schools. They also have brick and mortar components. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak from the perspective of Heritage Christian Online School. So we have face-to-face opportunities for students as well. And I teach at one of them. So I teach 1 day a week. So students can go and attend that 1 day a week. And in that 1 day a week, they might get a chance to learn about social studies, science, art, or PE, or multiple other options as well. It often depends on what the teachers in those areas are keen to offer. And that can then account for a large part of that grade level's kind of course expectations. So yeah, I think Heritage prides itself in like just providing those options for students, which I really do believe in as well. So, I mean, for our family, my three oldest kids attend those 1 day a week classes. It's a nice balance for us. It allows my wife to have a break for that day a little bit. But it also allows for someone else to speak into their lives for that day. And it's something we really appreciate, just having that flexibility of the 1 day a week option, but they don't necessarily need to be in class 5 days a week.
And I'm sure that the social dynamic is important for them too, just to learn how to be amongst their peers and socialize.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I've learned too in working with families, the number of families kind of in the home educating world, they're often a part of co-ops. Kids are playing on soccer teams. They're part of church youth groups. So yeah, it's a piece of that chance for them to connect with peers and collaborate. But there's so many opportunities out there for that beyond that.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your children and your students' faith formation? What does that look like? How has it been impacted by being in an online environment? Has that been more open? Are there more limitations? Love to hear about that.
Well, and I'm just going to add to that too, Kevin, that I think when we've had conversations in the community as a Christian school about possibly pursuing the option of making some online courses available for students to supplement what they're already taking, one of the questions people often have is, I'm not sure what that would look like. Like, how do you integrate that Christian component into the class where you're not face to face and you're not in that space with the student?
Yeah, I think for maybe I'll speak to it in kind of two ways. I mean, who you surround your children by is largely going to impact their faith, whether it's you as parents, whether it's the church that you're a part of and the youth leaders and the pastors, your family friends, your teachers. All of those pieces are going to contribute to kind of how your child sees the world. So Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we love it as parents is we get to speak into the lives of our children day in and day out. We get to be a huge part of their character development, but we also really value those people that surround us that also contribute. And I know in working with even teachers at Langley Christian, in past years, like I really appreciated seeing the way that my colleagues contributed to that faith formation through how they planned lessons and how they shared just who they are and who they were with their students. In an online setting, I would say it's a little bit more challenging for the students to, how to put it. As a teacher, you might not always see the results, but I think the teacher still has those interactions with students, whether it's through Zoom, through the meeting once a week, or whether it's through email. And kids are perceptive and they can kind of see through who adults are. And as they interact, I think that they'll see the heart of their online teacher through those interactions. Probably a little bit more challenging than if it was face-to-face. So there's a limitation there. And then I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into how online programs are developed in a way that shapes young people. And it's not something where you just add a Bible verse at the end. It's something where it's just throughout how they're being taught the material and how they're being encouraged to grow through what's being taught.
Yeah, if you have resources to share with us, I think we'd be curious to look at them and to continue to ask the questions of how are we being faithfully committed to helping and partnering with families in the faith formation of our students too. So yeah, anything that comes to mind in terms of studies and trying to get a real sense of what's going on in terms of faith formation in the online kind of world?
I don't know of any studies offhand. I could just speak from personal experience. And what I do see in the faith of the families that I work through is just a beautiful faith that's being developed in these young people. Often families are encouraging their children to kind of wrestle with difficult questions. And just having scripture present in their home is very evident. And I see it when I just met with a family today. Just hearing these kids talk about what they've been learning through the Bible Project app and things like that, and just how excited they are to be wrestling with some of those Bible stories that they're learning about.
Awesome. Sort of to summarize and maybe end on, final question here, just to the kind of exciting look ahead and on the horizon of us as a brick and mortar school being able to offer online learning. So roundtable, question is, what do you see as a benefit to having an online learning component? What might you see as maybe an area of stretch or challenge for us? So I'll start with Jonny, and then we'll go to Adam, and then Kevin.
For me, the greatest benefit is the fact that all kids are unique. And there's not a certain model that fits every young person. And I believe in providing options that can hopefully set young people up for success. And I think the challenge of it is it's not necessarily possible for every family because you can't just leave your kid at home to learn through an online course. So I think those are challenges that can be overcome in creative ways. But it is definitely one of the challenges of that way of doing school.
Yeah, I think the benefit is that you can offer some things outside of a timetable that you couldn't otherwise offer. And we often have students who need a particular course or have a particular passion that they want to pursue, and we're not always able to accommodate it in the timetable of a 300 or 400 student school. As we get bigger, you obviously have more flexibility, but it's sometimes, even in a bigger school, is very difficult to find that fit. That being said, I appreciate what Jonny says just around, not all schools being a fit for all kids. We've often said here over the last couple of years that LCS is more like a specialized boutique shop, not a superstore or a big box store. We don't offer all things to all people. And we're very, and I think have gotten really good at being very specific about the things that we do and that we do well, and being okay to let go of the other things, knowing that it might mean we're not a fit for every family. So I see the opportunity, really the benefit in the future is, really a question, are there some things that we could do really well that complement our mission and vision to equip kids, to provide a place of thriving, and help kids really sort of explore God's purpose for them in their life? Are there some opportunities for us to maybe offer some things that supplement what we already do well? And if so, kind of what are those?
No, this has been a really good conversation, Johnny. I think you've left us with a lot of things to be thinking about. In particular for me, you've reminded me of the importance of the family as the primary place and space and community where students' faith formation is nurtured. And without that, I don't think schools can exist in full partnership. And so we have a really big responsibility to support families in the development of their children. And I think part of it is that learning is such a fulfilling kind of experience. So when we see our students learning something meaningful for themselves, it's going to impact their families and their communities around them as well too. So what a unique opportunity I think it is to be connected together, learning in different spaces, and being encouraged to think what I think is a potential that exists with online learning.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank the panel for being here today and contributing to this great conversation. I'd like to thank listeners for listening here. And again, we want to be interactive. So if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can reach us at podcast@langleychristian.com and we will respond. So thanks again.